This is where the worlds of calculus, biology, and nutrition mix. So I am amped about that.
It is the most powerful analytical tool that I know of. You can be very, very specific about what the diet is for that person's chemistry because you're working right down at the physiochemical level.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Polish Your Life. You know, many people take a bunch of diagnostic tests trying to figure out what exactly is going on with their health, and they still don't know. And you know, there may be a solution to this problem because today we're going to be talking about Reams' biological theory of ionization and why this is being called the mathematical formula for perfect health. For those of you watching for the first time, we are a doctors networking group where healthcare providers collaborate to achieve the best clinical outcomes. So if you are a healthcare provider looking for collaborating partners, we invite you to join us. If you are an individual looking for clinical solutions, we also invite you to join us, follow us, subscribe. Also comment below because you may have questions. And today may be very, very interesting because we have a very special guest today.
This is where the worlds of calculus, biology, and nutrition mix. So I am amped about that. But first, hey, I just want to familiarize you with everybody here, guys. So obviously, Mike, thanks for hosting. We have our other co-host over there, and that's Dr. Ryan Diener, acupuncturist, owner, founder of Holistic Health and Acupuncture in Frederick, Maryland. So excellent. Glad to see you. And then finally, my longtime friend and fellow work companion, Dr. Jim Sharps, naturopath, president and CEO of International Institute of Original Medicine. And I'm sorry, Dr. Sharps, to trip over that. I am so excited. Let's just get right into it tonight. And if you could tell us about what RBTI is and why you're so passionate and excited about it.
Yes, it stands for Reams' biological theory of ionization. The way I like to refer to it, it is the most powerful analytical tool that I know of for health and vitality, especially for the price. There are other evaluation tools in terms of measuring energetics, et cetera, that can cost you $30,000 to over $100,000. But for less than $500 worth of equipment, testing equipment, et cetera, it is the most powerful analytical tool out there. And it helps you to personalize your health protocols. And it's better than a diagnosis. A diagnosis is a guess tempered by experience. So the more experience you have, the better you are at diagnosing, but you're still guessing. And I was guessing before I used this. And even though I was pretty successful, it took my success level to a whole new level because I'm not guessing anymore. So when I tell people about vitamin and mineral supplementation that they need, this test personalizes it. So you're not making generalized statements about, well, you need to drink more water. You need to eat more of this kinds of food. You can be very, very specific about what the diet is for that person's chemistry because you're working right down at the physiochemical level. Just to give you a little bit of background on Reams, people think that this system has been around for only 5 or 10 years.
No.
He's from the last century, from around 1910 to 1985. And so this has been around for over 70 years.
At first, Dr. Sharps?
What's
Dr.
that?
Reams started off as like an agricultural soil.
He was an agronomist. Right? Very good. Yes, he's an agronomist. He was a biochemist. He is a physicist. He actually met with Einstein when Einstein was at Princeton. And he said to Einstein, you showed us how to split the atom. Can you show us how to put it back together? Einstein said to him, no, that's your job. And that's basically what he did. That's what the Reams biological theory of ionization is. He basically figured out how things are put together. And there's a lot of misinformation out there, that even the schools I went to, in terms of how the body works. For example, cell mitosis, the cell division, it doesn't work like that. It works through something called ionization, and he proved that. And basically, the foundational principle behind Reams is that our health and vitality is based on our mineralization. And as you mentioned, he was an agronomist. And basically he said, people are like plants. If you don't, you can't grow things in the desert. You have to have good soil. and it has to have calcium and all the appropriate minerals, or you don't get the fruit, the vegetables, etc., or you get sickly or poor quality food. And we're from dust, we're from the earth, and plants, fruits and vegetables are the manufacturing facility for those minerals that we need. So that's the best source of it. And so once you understand this, you understand why certain diets work, why there's something that I like to talk about. A lot of people are doing, even in my field, naturopathy or corrective nutrition, what I call good things wrongly. So they're doing good things like eating fruits and vegetables, but are they eating the right fruits and vegetables for what their chemistry is?
Right.
Water. Everybody needs water, but what is the right amount of water? And we would be guessing, you know, they have this mythical half your body weight in ounces. That's a nice general guideline, but this gets it right down to the specific of what is the right amount of water based on your diet and lifestyle factors. And so it's a very, very powerful analytical tool that is, when I say powerful, it is complex, as you said, complex math, physics and calculus, et cetera. But the practical application is not that difficult. So,
and is this something easy? Before I have a myriad of questions, guys, do not let me hog this. Mike, Ryan, go ahead. I know you guys are dying to ask Dr. Sharp something. Go ahead and go for it there, guys.
Great. So I'm going to take all your questions now. So, so Dr. Sharp, can you go into a little more detail about what the process is of determining what the correct ratio is for an individual and why it's so specific versus something else that might be a typical, you know, you can get a urine test or a saliva test from Thorne, or, you know, there's a lot of supplement companies that have these things where you can go and get it. So what makes this different? Tell us a little bit about the specificity of this process.
Yes, what he did was, first of all, he measured all kinds of body. You know, he measured hair, he measured earwax, tears, all those things. But he finally found that you can get everything you need from measuring two things: urine and saliva. And there's basically 5 sets of numbers. So you're measuring your urine for what is called Brix, or the carbohydrate level, the sugar level. Is it too high, too low? What's optimum? You're measuring pH. Everybody knows about pH, alkaline versus acidic. You're measuring conductivity, salts, the electrical conductivity through the body. That's the third factor. And then there's cellular debris. There's 3 types of cells in the body, right? You have the live, active alpha cells. You have the dead or dying cells, which are the delta cells, and then the omega cells, were the dead cells. And so it measures how much of that cell debris is there. Of course, if you're not eliminating it and you have too much storing in, that's a formula for carcinoma, for cancer, for tumor development, et cetera. And then the last factor is measuring the nitrate nitrogen and the ammonia nitrogen, or your ureas. And that is basically, are you digesting your protein? Are you getting good protein breakdown? And even more important than that, are you assimilating it? So it's not what you eat, it's what you assimilate. And so by reading these numbers, and then the last part of that number, so the cellular, the protein breakdown and utilization, and that bottom number is the ammonia, or the amount of waste coming out. So by looking at this, is there too much waste coming out? Is there too little? And as an evaluation of this formula, and if any one number is perfect, it's not perfect. Just like, you know, in an arithmetic formula, if you change one number, the answer changes. And it's a very complex, there's literally 2,600 to the 2,600 power permutations and combinations. That's a lot of arithmetic, a lot of calculus, but you don't need to know all of that. You need to know some things like, is the hydration too high or too low? Is the pH, is the pH causing the food to go through your body too fast or too slow? So it's like if you have a very complex, high performance car, you don't need to know all the things under the hood, but you do need to know something, because this is very powerful, and you can hurt somebody if you don't know what you're doing. But if you know where the gas pedal is and the steering wheel is and the brake, you have a very powerful vehicle that can get you from here to there. RBTI, the analogy is, here's a very, very powerful tool that you can show people how to use for practical application, for personal, or for, like, for example, in your field, professional empowerment. So it takes the guesswork out. So you're very good at what you do, and you know all the meridians and this, that, and the other thing, but you don't know, how do you know if what you're doing is working for that person? This tells you if your therapy is right for that person, you see? And if the diet is right, for example, nutrition. So you can see it's a very, very powerful tool, but you don't need to know all about the 284 transformer glands and the Krebs cycle. Now it's nice, and the more you know, the more you can wax eloquently. But all the person wants to know is, am I eating the right diet? Why do I have this pain? Why am I dizzy? Why am I tired? And a blood test can't tell you that. See, as a matter of fact, what I tell most of my clients and my students is, if you go and have a blood test and you get the results of that blood test and you're there with the doctor and you don't tell him what your problem is, that you have headaches or you have a cyst or you have a cardiovascular problem or you can't breathe, you're going to be staring at each other for a long time. Because the blood test, and you've heard of the old saying of people, they have a blood test, they're told that the blood test is perfect, and they drop dead 2 weeks later. With this test, it tells you that if you don't make a change in the next 2 weeks, you're going to die of a heart attack. Or this guy, Reams, was so good, he would tell you that without changes, you have about 3 years and 4 months to live. Because he measured by calculating the number, he was able to pinpoint how much reserve energy you have left and how long you live. And he was off by a few hours, not a few years, not a few months. And some clients, he basically said, like if you were a young 40-something-year-old, he said, you know what, you really need to be in a wellness center. And the person would say, I feel great. And he said, you really need to be in a wellness center. And the person literally would die within 2 weeks because the number is that powerful. It tells you there's different zones.
So Dr. Jim, what type of providers can use this? Like, is this something that, like Ryan, an acupuncturist, myself, like a chiropractor, could learn pretty readily and start in a practice? Or is this something where, no, we'd have to refer to a naturopath? Or how do we start to interact with Reams?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. As I said, it's very, very powerful, but for the practical application and usage of it, you need basically a third grade education in common sense. Wow. And most of the practitioners I know fit into that category. So you can be a housewife. So what I'm doing in these health seminars, I'm trying to develop health communities. That health community can be a person of one. It can be you. So I'm working with world-class athletes, and I'm showing them how with correct hydration, this, that, and the other thing, they can improve their performance. And I'm working with, for example, housewives who want to improve the health and vitality of themselves, their spouse, and their children. So, and of course, now the most difficult people sometimes are practitioners because they already have a paradigm. Right. And so the less you know, the easier it is to understand this paradigm shift and looking at things from this perspective. So
and if you're looking from a diagnostic paradigm versus we have to identify an illness, not like, hey, what energetic things are you moving? Because you're an energetic being, and are you assimilating enough energy to propel you forward? You could get lost in that. Mike, it looks like you're 2 seconds away from interjecting something really awesome there. What did you want to do before I go on with Dr. Sharps there?
You know, to me, it's very fascinating. And that's because you have, Reams' biological theory of ionization, something that seems so complex even by its name. And then I'm so thankful that we are using RBTI acronym, to make sure that it's easier to remember. But the practical application is what interests me the most, and the viewer as well. So one thing I know because I did it, and I know because I saw Dr. Sharps in the office doing it for patients, it's easy. So that's one thing, that you don't have to schedule a bunch of tests. People are very uncomfortable too, because sometimes you need to take your blood or you need to do a lot of different things. Right. Nothing like that with RBTI. So that's one. Another thing is the practical application in the context of the biggest problem that people have that I am so passionate about solving for people within the group here is, and that's the problems that people go to a doctor. Sometimes they follow recommendations and they get better. Great. And I love it. And I want everybody to have that. But the reality is that, a lot of people go from doctor to doctor to the doctor to the doctor. They get tired, frustrated, and they can't figure out what's going on with me. What's the reason? And I still keep going down. So just knowing that there is another piece of diagnostic testing that you can put in the equation that can be not only beneficial to you, but can be even more accurate. To me, this is something that just, I have goosebumps when I think about it. It is so vital for people to at least know about it. And that's, I will let Dr. Sharps continue with details about it, but this is where my mind goes, is the feeling of that person who is trying to look for solutions, and they finally find out the reason and they're able to address the cause. I completely love it. I remember Dr. Sharps was talking about oxygen availability. And to me, this is also fascinating because we measure our oxygen in the body with many tests, but not a lot of people measure how much of that oxygen is actually available to us. So Dr. Sharps, if you don't mind, talk about it a little bit, because I found this very fascinating as well.
Yes, that is one of the factors. So that is the carbohydrate level. And there is a zone of percentage of oxygen in the urine. And specifically is 1.2% to 2%. If you're in that zone, that is what is called the perfect healing zone, where you have optimal healing power. So when you get all of these numbers in the appropriate healing zone, that's when your body has the fastest and the best healing. Now, if the number is too high, then you're pre-diabetic or diabetic. See, from a blood test, they look at glucose. Now, that really doesn't tell you that much because they're only looking at glucose. There are many other sugars. This looks at all of the sugars in your urine. And based on where that zone is, where you are, then you're pre-diabetic, diabetic, et cetera. And if it's too low, then so if it's too high, you have poor oxygen, you have a lot of availability, but poor utilization. It has to be in the zone for optimum availability and utilization. Now, if it's too low, then you don't have either availability. If you don't have availability, it's obvious you don't have utilization. And then that's a prescription for headaches, fatigue, cold hands, cold feet. So it explains that. The blood won't tell you that. I don't care what your glucose level is. I'll give you an example. I have a client that comes into me and I'm looking at the numbers, and they're basically saying, you're giving me my autobiography. I'm just telling you what the numbers say. It says that you have a tendency towards cold hands and feet, that you get it as the day goes on, you tend to get emotional, you get irritable. And how do you know? I don't know. I'm telling you what the numbers are telling me. And let me just, if you don't mind, Mike, correct one thing. You said this is a great diagnostic tool. It is not a diagnostic tool. It is an analytical tool. See, you're not guessing. And a diagnostic tool like blood, based on the lab you use and the reagents that you use, you can get different results. So you can take your same blood and send it to 20 different labs and get 20 different results, because they have different processing and they have different reagents and things of that nature. Also, you can take your blood test at 10 o'clock in the morning and you can take it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You have different results. This is a much more accurate analysis, Reams found, of what is going on in your body. And whether you're in Timbuktu, New Zealand, Columbia, Maryland, in Ryan's office, it's this. We all are looking at the same number. Arithmetic is arithmetic. It's not subjective, and it's not variable. It is specific. So, of course, if you do the testing wrong, if you have compromised equipment and you let it get dirty, that's one thing. But if you do the test right, and incidentally, the whole test takes 5 minutes. The longest part of the test is one where you have to look at the sample for 5 minutes. Most of it is you take your urine, you take a drop of it, and you put it on a refractometer. That's 10 seconds. So from
And it's not costly either, right, Dr. Sharps? I mean,
refractometer, you can get it for $29.
Economic.
Yeah, the refractometer costs $29.
Oh my God.
Now you can get an expensive one for $199, or you can get a digital one for $300 something. But I use a $29 refractometer, and it works.
Everyone is hearing that this is not one of these exclusive things that this is accessible to everybody, gives everybody a snapshot of where their health is at that time. And they can do this several times and know how they're moving. We always talk about, hey, if you're lost in the woods, sometimes you need to get a bearing. This allows you to get a bearing of where you're going. And it's a very powerful analytic tool. It's great. Dr. Sharps, I was wondering if you could tell us when you made the switch, because you've been a naturopath for decades.
Right.
When did you make the switch more to this, the RBTI? Because I don't remember early on, I don't remember hearing this, but the last 5-10 years, I remember hearing more about this from you.
You're absolutely right. I started.
Yeah, and tell us about that. And then tell us what was one of the big things that you went, oh my gosh, I was doing this right, but I wasn't doing it as right as I'm doing it now.
Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah.
And I didn't start using it in my practice or myself personally or teaching it until 2015. So that's fairly recent. So for the last 5 or 6 years, I've known about it for 20 years. As you said, I'm the president and CEO of the International Institute of Original Medicine. It's been in my curriculum since 2003. And when I first looked at it, I said, this urine saliva, this is, and I have 3 doctorates and a PhD. What do I need this for? But as I continue to work with my students, and I'm a mentor for some of the PhD candidates and doctoral candidates, and they're asking me, well, what tools do you recommend? And I looked at all kinds of things. I looked at, there's oscilloscopes out there. You can spend thousands of dollars. And a lot of the systems, which I won't talk about, nothing was less than $5,000. Then I looked at this thing again. I said, you know what? I read the book. And what got me, Todd, the thing that, when I found out that this guy, he worked with medical doctors, and he was given 25,000 terminal cases to work on in 1970. And so I'm reading through all of this. And then in 1971, the results, all of them improved except 6. I said, you know what? I need to know a little bit of, and I read it. I went through it first to kind of say, to show where the flaws were. And as I studied more and more and got into the math and the science and the genius of this guy and what he was doing and all the miracles, and he was, as you said, he was in the ground. He was in the ground in planting. He had these 10-foot corn when everybody else's were 2 feet. So he used the agronomy and he started applying it to human beings, and he was getting all these results. And so, and you know me, I do completed staff. I started on myself. And as you know, I'm also a senior athlete. So here it is, and I'm testing myself, and I'm saying, wait a minute. I noticed my performance improving. So basically, what was happening is I was progressing. I'm an old man. So and here it is. At the age of 70, I was getting better, and everybody else was deteriorating. And so they were asking, and I would tell them RBTI, and they think I'm crazy anyway. So they weren't paying any money. And then I was using it on my clients. And so that's how I started. I started with myself, my clients. And let me so from my personal standpoint, from a professional standpoint, and as I did more and more studying, I saw the power of this. It is not a debatable issue. All of my doctoral candidates, they have to take one of the courses that we provide, and all of our PhD candidates have to take both. And I'm going around now. The reason why I'm not in Columbia, Maryland, and over at the facility is I'm doing these Zoom classes now, training people all over the world, literally in Australia, Europe, here, anybody who wants to know this, so that we can set up these, what I'm calling these health communities. And the health communities can be one person who wants to, and so in racing, this is another good analogy. The car racing, you got those 500 laps. By improving their hydration, they're getting these superb performances. And you know, those are long, and the fatigue level is down and everything. By following these principles, people are improving their personal health and vitality. And from a practitioner standpoint, you are helping your clients. You're much more effective in terms of pinpointing what their therapy is, and then determining if, in fact, are you gaining energy or are you losing energy? All RBTI is about energy, and we are energy beings. And fundamentally, the way the body works is if you're not getting in the right energy from your food, for systemic performance, for your lungs, all the different organs, etc., guess what? It has to pull from here and there. So it has to pull from your brain cells, your lung cells, etc. So that's why we deteriorate, and you wind. And it's about minerals.
So in theory, if we could keep that energy flowing constantly the whole time, which is not, we wouldn't decay or age because there would be no borrowing from other, in the essence of the theory. Am I right in saying that?
Well, sort of. I'm going to assert to you, I'm going to die someday.
Right. We all definitely are.
That's because it's dynamic. What it does is, if you're based on the percentage of your reserve energy. So, for example, if I'm functioning in the high 80 percentile to the low 90 percentile in my systemic reserves, and I'm competing with people that are under 30%.
Oh.
The joke I use is I'm competing against a bunch of old men. They're falling apart, and I'm jumping and running and flying over and not hurting because
for those of you who don't know, Dr. Sharps, he talks about competing. He's serious. He has 4 gold medals in the senior Olympics. And I mean, there's tons of people following him because of those secrets, like, what are you doing? So the reason why we are showing you all this is that there are those secrets that he doesn't want to make secrets. And actually, he wants that to be part of a bigger community and a more like a worldwide spread knowledge that everybody should know about it, whether you apply it or not. Like today, I'm learning more and more. It's not a diagnostic test. It's more of an analytical tool. I do have a tough question for you, maybe a tough one, or at least something that I have as maybe a block from believing the results are going to be 100% accurate. And here is the question. So we talk about blood tests. You take a blood test one day, another day is going to be different times of the day. RBTI, you can also take your saliva and your urine, which also changes not only in pH, but also in the composition over time. So how many times do we have to take it over time to make sure that we have accurate results, or is just one giving us an accurate analysis?
That is such a superb question. And you're right. The body goes through ebbs and flows. And so your chemistry is different during the sleep cycle than it is during the exercise cycle, et cetera. So essentially, the ideal time to take the test, without going through all the details, is about an hour and a half to 2 hours after your meal. Because what you want to do is you want to see how is your body handling that? What is your liver strength and effect? How strong is your bile in being able to break down the foods? What is your mineral level? Are you mineral deficient, or do you have the right mix of calciums that you need for systemic function? So you want to determine the rhythm of life. And so it depends on whether you're in a retreat setting, then you can take 4 tests a day easy. But even if you took it once every week, 2 weeks, so it's based on personal requirements and capacities, what your situation is. So you're right. But what you want to do is you want to understand what your personal rhythm is. By you taking those tests and then seeing what your deficiencies are, what your requirements are, how that steak you ate yesterday, did it improve your energy? See, there's 2 parts to the formula. Here's the energy coming in and the energy coming out. If you have more energy going out than energy coming in, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure you're losing energy. And if this happens over a long period of time and you're continuing to eat, for example, I talked about doing good things wrongly. Nuts and seeds for vegetarians are very good. But if you're eating nuts and seeds and your body can't break it down and you're losing more energy, then, and this test is telling you, you stop the nuts and seeds and you get yourself back in balance so that your body can pull the minerals out of the food. See, people have a wrong concept of even diet. And if, for example, if I asked you, what percentage of your food do you think contributes to your health and vitality? Most people say 60, 70, 80%. And when I tell them, they're flabbergasted. And then I go through and I prove it to them logically, not even scientifically.
80-20 rule, right? There's an 80-20 rule, fits here too. So,
right.
So it's an interesting thing that you're bringing up because I keep thinking about this as well. So like if you take the test and then you get the analysis, but your test is based off of, let's say your lunch is vegetarian one day, and then the next day it's a high protein lunch. Aren't you going to have extremely different results based on that? Or, you're just going to get an analysis that is going to show you the difference between the two. So it's valuable to do it multiple times. That's the first part of the question. The second part, because I want to make sure that you have time to answer. The second part of the question is, are you getting just nutritional recommendations, or are you getting supplementation, or is this an anti-supplementation system? What is the combination that you're getting between nutritional recommendations, et cetera?
Okay, let's take both parts of that. So the first part is those numbers will change based on your diet. If your diet is unstable and you're weak, even if the wind blows, you're going to fall apart. If your foundation, the way I like to explain, if your foundation is strong, then when you build your windows, doors, and rooms, if the wind comes, nothing's going to happen to those windows and doors and coverings, et cetera. So if there's 5 zones. If you're in that optimum zone, you can eat nails, and it won't affect the numbers. But if you're in a poor zone, and let's say the zones which are A, B, C, D, and E, you don't have to be a rocket science to figure out if you're in E, that's not a good place to be. So you can be in D and drink juice and get indigestion, eat an apple or banana. Or you can be if you're in the A zone, if you're in that healing zone that I talked about earlier, you can eat meat, you can eat dairy, you can eat rocks, you can eat candy. The numbers are, you have a strong foundation. So that's what you want to do. You want to see where it's all about energy. And incidentally, if I can answer the question this way, one of the reasons why the blood test doesn't pick it out, the blood test doesn't pick up a lot of these issues that you pick up in this test until your energy reserves are below 30%. Most people are above 30%. And so they're coming in, they're talking about their issues, and you're looking at it, the blood doesn't show it.
All the time.
You can be 60, 70%, and I'm showing, hey, look where you are. You're in this zone, and look as I'm taking this test, you're slipping. You don't have to be a rocket science to say if you're going from B to D, that's not good news. But if you're in the high B working down towards A, hey, what you're doing, what you're eating, you're gaining energy. So you're not going to live forever, but you're going to have maximized performance, and you'll know what that is for the first time in your life. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So you're right.
For this quick disclaimer for everybody watching, when we talk about eating rocks and nails, please don't do that. Okay, this is not meant to be taken.
I shoot on my phone.
Eating meat for some people and eating nuts and seeds, you will get more nutritional value. It might be easier to digest a rock or a nail, and that's the way your body treats it. And you feel like a rock is in there. You're double over in pain, and you're constipated. You can't break down rocks. And if you have weak digestion, you can't even break down lettuce. And I'll give you I have some of my sickest clients, and this is one of the reasons I liked it, were vegetarians. They were vegetarians, and if your numbers aren't in the right zone, raw food is your enemy. And I had clients, everybody has to have vitamin C. But if you're already acidic and you're in the wrong zone, and you take vitamin C, over the counter, which is ascorbic acid, You're taking the numbers further down. You want something that's going to be more alkaline, a lipospheric vitamin C, or onion soup, or camu, an herb that is high. So from a practitioner standpoint, you say, oh, okay, you need vitamin C, but this is even the form. You see what I'm saying? So now that's what I'm saying. It might my practice better. I'm always talking about vitamin C and vitamin D. But if you're in a certain level, and I'd have my clients taking vitamin D, and it's making them worse, and they don't understand why. And I'm telling them, because you can't take it that way. You have to do this, that, and the other thing. So there are supplements to answer your question. But
This
the
is
foundation should be food.
Wow, this is a big paradigm shift for folks.
It is. That's why I said if you're an expert and you're so busy with your practice, you're not looking at these foundational principles.
And if you're a raw foodist, which generally, hey, eating raw food, good for you, things like that. But again, if you're not pulling energy from it, everybody, that's bad for you. So I'm so glad you made that really clear for folks. And I just can't believe more people do not know more about RBTI.
Yeah, something that people need to know about Dr. Sharps is that when he talks about diet, you have like people are divided, right? So some people say, hey, eat carnivore, right? Like one side, right? Another one, keto, something in between.
Right.
Then we have, eat fruits and vegetables and then mix it up and have a balanced diet. And then we have vegetarians, even vegans on the other side. And then people are defending their point of view. What I love about what Dr. Sharps is saying over and over and over again, he's very non-judgmental to any diet. He said, let's test it and we'll see. Because maybe it is good for you.
Right.
And this is a very different, it is a paradigm shift, like you said, Dr. Todd. It's a very different approach. And it's also an easy one to convince people to, because you don't create enemies. You're like, hey, let's test it. Because if you've been on carnivore and it's working for you, great. But if it's not working, at least you will know. And that's what I really appreciate you, Dr. Sharps, being so open, because it's so easy being on one side to judge the other side and just say that it's wrong, but it may be wrong for you, while it may be good for somebody else. And that's very fascinating to me. Yeah,
there's another system, just to piggyback on from that, there's another system that we've used quite a bit in our office that's similar in the sense that there's no, keto is not the best diet. Paleo is not the best diet. Vegetarianism is not the best diet. It's what is your metabolic type. And there's a system called metabolic typing that helps you determine, should you be eating high meat protein? Should you be eating vegan, and everything in between? So can you compare, the recommendations that you get from RBTI to something like that, where it also has this kind of like it's best for the individual, but what's the difference between something like metabolic testing and what you get from RBTI?
Metabolic testing is good, but it's not as powerful. You get portions of it in metabolic testing, but you get a much fuller spectrum. Because metabolic testing will tell you nothing about conductivity. So if you have, it'll help you with digestive issues, but all these numbers have to be in sync. So if you have the perfect pH, for example, but poor electrical conductivity, either over conductivity, which is stressing out your organs, or under conductivity, which is causing your organs to underperform. Or remember we talked about the oxygen. If you see, the liver has to have calcium, oxygen, and water to work. So you have to make sure that your minerals are right. And so it's more than diet. It's overall systemic function and integrity. And going back to my analogy, if you understand that and get that foundation right, then no matter what wind that comes by, the house is going to stand. You might get a little nick, but it's very fixable. It doesn't fall apart and collapse. And so all of these, I'm not against any diagnostic tool, but you said it's diagnostic. It's not analytical. I'm using your words. I like martial arts because you can use the strength of person to say you're still guessing because you don't know the full picture. This when you're seeing the full picture, and you're seeing and you're getting a complete perspective on and as Mike said, is non-doctrinal. I don't care what you believe. What are the results? Math, there's an old saying in the statistics world. Statistics don't lie, but liars use statistics. So you can do all kinds of stuff, but once you get the formula, you can't let me tell you how powerful this is. I have people, I put them on a program and there's a biorhythm center and they go to do their program and they come back 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and they haven't been doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then they know they have an appointment. And so 3 days before, they start doing all the right things. And I'm looking at the numbers, and I had an older woman. I said, "Oh, you didn't get a chance to do the program, did you?" She said, "Oh, no, Dr. Sharps, I did everything you asked me to do." I said, "Well, I'm looking at this. It looks like you had something that was very difficult to digest 3 days ago. But, oh, no, I'm a vegetarian." And I said, "Wow, this is rare. I haven't seen this before." Because and as I explained, he said, "Well, I did go to this potluck 3 days ago, and there was this stuff on there that I wasn't sure. It could have been meat, and there was some almonds." I said, "Oh, that's what the numbers are saying." So you can't fool it. Mathematics, you can fool your doctor. You can say, "Oh yeah, doc, you look at," and the blood might look the same as it did before. Your creatinine levels and all of that, and even the metabolic thing. You still, based on your metabolic type or your blood type, you can consume it. That didn't change, but at this point in time, your body can't handle it. You see, so it looks at this full spectrum, these 5 sets of numbers, and it's a much more complete analysis, evaluation of what I like to call systemic requirements, right, and capacities. So that's why I talk about people doing good things wrongly. They're doing good things. I'll give you another example. I had a woman, she was my client, and when she first came in, I told her she needed to drink more water. And so she did real well, solved the problem, and of course the diet and everything. And she happened to be a world-class weightlifter. But anyway, she came in 2 years later, eyes all puffy, and I don't know what my problem is. I got this back pain and everything. And I'm going through this, wow, this diet is and I saw she's like 4 foot nothing. And she had this thing. She looked like a dromedary camel. She might as well have 2 humps on her back. She had this huge thing of water. I said, I won't use it. Such and such. What are you doing with that water? I said, "Oh yeah, I drink my water." I said, "How much of that do you drink?" "Oh yeah." I said, "That's your problem. You're drinking too much water. You're stressing out. "Oh no, I can't stop this." And she said, and at the end of the session, she said, "Well, you know what? You were right the last time. I'm gonna do what you said." She cut her water down. Didn't see her anymore. So water is good, but if you do it wrong, you can drown or you can overstress your body. So that's why I say, and so you can be doing good things. You can be doing good therapies. I'm sure you're very good at what you do, and you're making just like I am, and you're making a lot of good positive impacts because you're smart. You know your field, but you don't know if how fast it's impacting their reserves, or if they're getting better at a cost. Right. So what if you're getting better and you're losing brain cells? See, so and there are people, like for example, fasting is good for you, but if the number's in a certain zone, you can't fast. Otherwise, it impacts your potassium reserves, which impacts your brain, which then impacts your energy level, and on and on. So I like to talk about requirements and capacities, individual requirements and capacities. And it's an integrated and comprehensive application of your field. Now, mine is diet and lifestyle. And if I gave you the best diet in the world, and you don't sleep for 2 or 3 days, you're not going to beat me in the hurdles. I don't care what you eat. I don't care what kind of acupuncture you get or what herbs you take. You need to have, that's why I love original medicine. The reason you asked me earlier, why did I do it? it showcases and emphasizes the superiority of what my expertise is, diet and lifestyle. You cannot get into that blue zone, that healing zone, that A zone without the 8 laws of health: air, water, sunlight, nutrition, exercise, rest, emotional balance. You can't. So you know, some people, and you know this in your field, they shouldn't be sick, but they got unresolved emotional issues, this, that, and the other thing, which is blocking them up. And I don't care what you do, they're not going to get well. But if you're looking at these numbers and say, well, you know what? And I do this with people. I said, does your husband kind of ask you by mid-afternoon, why are you so upset? You start getting emotionally weepy or irritable. So how do you know? I said, because I'm looking. And somebody asked earlier, if you look at the numbers at different times of the day, you can see what the rhythms are of the body.
Hey, Dr. Sharp, real quick. So we got all this great information, and I gotta say, we are overwhelmed by your enthusiasm. And guys, Dr. Sharps is gonna like tire us all out. So I think we all know that RBTI like works because he's going at it, and we're like starting to like get tired. He's like, bring on the questions. Simple question, just for the common person watching and all. What does a typical session look like with RBTI? Like, just get us through, like, just, you don't have to go real extensive, but just give us like, hey, we come in, you do this. Typically we do a follow-up in a month or so. We do this. What is a typical, I know it can change case to case, but give us a typical thing that would to expect with RBTI.
It's basically the same for everybody. You come in, you give a sample of urine and saliva. Like I said, I get the results, and I basically tell them in that. And of course, I ask them what their key concerns and goals. This is what blows their mind. I look at it and say, "Oh yeah, I see that," or I'll say some other things in addition to what they say. How do you know? I didn't tell you this. No, the numbers are telling me this. So then I put together a more complete plan, and we have a reference set of numbers. And the way I like to do this, I like to be very conservative. So in the beginning, you know, I give you almost, you know, this is what I learned in school. I give you half a shopping bag of supplements, some vitamin C, some vitamin D, some zinc, some iron, B12. Now I'm saying, you know what? All I want you to do is, and some of my clients get angry, say, I'm paying you all this money. You tell me go home and drink water and tell me what the color of my urine is and tell me and just take vitamin C and take this shopping bag of supplements that I brought in for you to tell me what's good and not use those, only use these 3 things, you know, and then they come back and say, whoa, that's what I'm saying. When you start getting good results. And
when do they usually come back in, Doc? Do they come back in 2 weeks, 4 weeks?
Well, I do a 3-phase program. First phase is usually 3 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
So let's do some basic things because you can't give them everything at once, right?
No way.
Right. You know, you're overwhelmed. So you have to kind of let them adapt and go, and then they come back to second phase. And the second phase, I might, based on their results, do a little bit more intense cleansing, like liver flushes or kidney flushes, or maybe some systematic, some periodic fasting, whatever, based on what their issues are. So, you know, based on whether it's cancer or cardiovascular. Now, let me tell you something interesting. Specifically, cardiovascular. If you really understand and apply this, people have to find something else to die from. Over 95% of the people, probably 98% of people have to find something else to die from than cardiovascular disease. It's almost impossible to die of a heart attack by understanding these numbers. And you know what the remedy is for about 60, 70% of those issues? Reading the ureas and seeing where they are in terms of their, whether it's mild, moderate, or high risk in terms of a pectoral heart attack or an angial heart attack if it's a salt level. And I'm looking at this, and you know what the remedy is? Systematic drinking of water. And so in the beginning, I would give hawthorn berries, all kinds of herbs. And so some of my clients get kind of angry because and you would think that I would want to make my money from supplements, but I'm interested in empowerment. Right. I want my clients to be empowered to take care of their own health. I don't want to own them. I want to empower them to own their health. And all of us are in the field of, we're educators. We don't own them. We want to teach them, and we want to empower them to manage their health and vitality. Does that make sense?
Excellent.
And so that's what I'm saying. And to me, as a matter of fact, I have some of my clients that said basically, you're too cavalier. What do you mean is the easiest thing in the world is to do is to prevent and reverse cancer? What do you mean is it? And it is. If you know this stuff, and because they see people dying all over the place, but they don't know, and they're not empowered to take care of their health, and even told to. They want to go. Even us as practitioners, they want me to heal them. And what I'm in the business of is showing people how to heal themselves. All healing is between them and God. And I'm teaching them these laws, and they don't want to hear that. They want me to tell them, here's a supplement you take. And so the analogy I use before, I can give them some nice windows and curtains and coverings, but I want to give them a foundation. So you can always change the windows and the supplement, all that stuff. But if you have a strong foundation, you can deal with emotional stuff. You can deal with physical stuff. And cancer stuff, the body knows how to eat up and get rid of cancer. And there is a natural chemo. It's called juicing. There is a natural radiation. It's called sunlight. Right. There is a natural surgery. Cutting out bad habits and bad diet.
And what I like about this system, Doc, is you're constantly analyzing an assessment, and good providers never stop analyzing, never stop assessing. And as we're kind of coming to the end here, what is something we should kind of really keep in mind? What is something that you want to make sure people get a hold of? I really want people to know how to get a hold of more information about this. I think we're going to have a lot of things. I know, Mike, you're going to provide information for folks to reach out to Dr. Sharps or learn more about the Reams system or a number of things. So with our last few minutes, let's finish up strong there and tell us what we really want to make sure we know about this system. And guys, if you have further questions you want to ask before we close up, push them in there right now.
Yeah, the Bible for this is a book called Choose Life or Death by Carrie A. Reams. So it's 160, and it goes through a lot of, if you have trouble sleeping, get this book. It goes into more detail than you need, but it gives the scientific foundation and basis for it. And it talks about some things that you would understand. So if I want people to walk away with something, properly hydrate. I talked about where your health and vitality comes from. Most people are shocked to hear it's from Ryan is a genius. 80% of your health and vitality comes from air, air and sleep and sunlight.
When you asked me that question, I remember saying I flipped it. I was totally off with that.
Yeah, everybody thinks it's food. And so you don't live off of the food you eat. You live off of the energy from the minerals in the food that you can assimilate and utilize. And so people are shocked. And then I tell them, so let me give you this analogy. How many days can you live without food? 40 or more days. How long can you live without sleep? Well, you can't live more than 3 or 4 days, 3 to 5 days. How long can you live without water? Maybe 5 to 10 days. How many days can you live without air? 3 or 5 to 5 minutes. See, you're getting over 20 meals a minute of air, but nobody thinks of that. There are nutrients in the air. And this is what's going to blow your mind. People are worried about protein. You know where for any amino acid, you need nitrogen. The best source of it is air. Air is 78% nitrogen. You don't need one blade of meat. You don't need any nuts and seeds. You need proper breathing. And you get all of the protein you need. That's why vegetarianism works, because you don't have to break down the meat all the way to get it down to the foundation. See, what happens is the food needs to be broken all the way down to a gas and then be rebuilt into your hair, nail, skin thing and all of that. So is it easier to go from a juice or a plant or from an animal? So you can see this hierarchy of what is the least stress on the body. So when and people are worried about getting 15 meals a day or snacking, no. You need variety in your meal. So you have I tell people, eat the rainbow. The more colors. Now, all of your organs, you notice are different colors because they have different mineral combinations. So the fruits and vegetables, those different colors are because of the mix of minerals. So to walk away from this, if you start hydrating properly and start eating more intelligent based on, see, you have more capacity and you can take more liberties than me. Or another way of saying it is, if I don't want you to catch me in the hurdles, I'm not going to take any liberties. I'm going to do what's going to maximize my functional integrity. And let me just share a personal thing, if I don't mind. Since I did this, and you know me, I do my homework. I've been testing myself. I grew 3/8 of an inch in 5 years.
Oh, I need
just because as you get older, as you give up your minerals and your teeth and your bones, you start shrinking. I remineralized my bones. And so I lost, in 70 years, I lost almost a half an inch, even with my good diet and lifestyle, because I was doing some good things wrongly. I improved it and I got the right supplements, and I grew 3/8 of an inch between 2015 when I started and last year when I measured my height against my son, who's taller than me now. But I remember we had a bet about around that time, about 5 years ago. And it just so happened when I put his height, which is lower than mine, and I put mine, and when I measured him when he was 4 inches taller, and I said, well, let me look at myself. And I grew 3/8 of an inch. I wasn't even focused on that. But I understood it because I said, oh yeah, I remineralized. And as people get old, they start, because their bones are collapsing. That's why people get osteoporosis by the time they're in their 50s, 60s. And wrong diet can do that. But then if you, like you said, Ryan, if you eat the right foods, the right therapies, hydrotherapy, acupuncture, getting the nerves, the energy to flow right to the organs, and you get those mineral reserves up. I'm not going to go into much more detail, but I've improved where I was from an energetic standpoint. Now, I wasn't bad to begin with, but let me give you an analogy. Let's say I was in the 60s, high 60s, low 70s, when my competition is in the 40s, dropping down to the 30s. Then all of a sudden, I'm getting older, and now my reserves are in the high 80s, low 90s. What chance do they have?
Exactly.
Just to make that analogy.
Yeah, it's great, Doc.
Am I afraid of COVID? Are you kidding me?
Right. I know, and it's so great. Mike, what other final thoughts do you have for the good doc before we close tonight there?
As I'm listening, I know that people should be as fascinated as we are with this information, because this is truly remarkable. And it's science. It's not a guesswork. It's science. It's analysis. It's mathematics. I know that we can go over a lot more stuff, but I think this is enough to give people a very good sample that there are things out there that they can all do, that we can all do to improve our life. I'm always thinking about that person who's going from doctor to doctor and trying to figure out what's going on. This is just one of the tools in the toolbox that may be the most powerful one that is being ignored, or even people don't know that it exists. So I want to bring it to your attention if you're watching, and I want to let everybody know, because we have two groups of people watching. One is providers. So if you're a healthcare providers and you're looking for collaborating partners, everybody here on the call is very valuable for you. And in the context of today's conversation, definitely connect with Dr. Sharps. I'm going to link the Institute of Original Medicine, International Institute of Original Medicine, so you can connect directly, find out more about RBTI, definitely connect. And if you are an individual looking for clinical solutions, ask questions in comments, connect directly, but also share this with other people, because you may be good, but you may have an aunt, family member, grandma, uncle who's really struggling, and that one piece of information can really turn it around for them. Maybe that's what I hope for everybody, is to have progress when it comes to healthcare. I want everybody to win 4 gold medals at the age that Dr. Sharps is, and feel so good and grow taller when everybody is getting shoulder with age. Really, really fascinated with everything that I'm hearing. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Dr. Todd. And a huge thank you to Dr. Sharps for today. And for everybody watching, we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.